Hey, Happy Friday. This week, Apple seems to have run out of new ideas for their hardware division. Google might have had a bit too many ideas for their hardware division. And Sonos has released an app that cost the company $30 million and 100 people, plus potentially even delayed some of their products. Crazy. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Incogni. Okay, for my first story of the week, 3 new ideas are showing that Apple is kind of running out of big hardware ideas. First, Bloomberg insists that Apple is prioritizing a tabletop robot as its next big device with an iPad-like display that can tilt and spin in 360 degrees with a robotic limb. So this sounds like the moderately successful Amazon robot, but mounted to your table and with Siri. Can you hear it fly? You could be flying anywhere but here. They aim to release the device in 2026 or 2027 for around $1,000, and surprisingly is now leading the new robot effort. So Apple spent $10 billion on a car project that flopped, then they brought out the Vision Pro, which let's just say is a moderate success so far, and then now they're working on a tabletop robot. I mean, seems like they really want to have the next big product category, but none of this sounds like an iPhone level success. And indeed, the second rumor says that the only major hardware innovation for the next iPhone might be a camera button. And apparently accessory makers are already making cases with a space for the button. There is nothing bad, and I bet that the Sony Xperia fans will have a field day with this, but as Bloomberg itself implies, I guess the days of radical innovation with the iPhone are kind of behind us.
I'm going to demo like this. It's a DSLR camera that I'm pretending to hold. That's it? That's the innovation they've come up with for iPhone 16 generation, a button for the camera?
Meanwhile, for the year after, all rumors point towards a kind of iPhone Slim with weaker cameras and lower performance in exchange for the thinness, plus Mark Gurman also mentions a new iPhone SE in 2025 for the more budget-conscious consumers. I think Apple is correctly assessing that the iPhone does not need to be reinvented, but I mean, if the current product does not need major changes and that the future products are not forthcoming in a way that is meaningful, then I guess the company is kind of running out of ideas for hardware. Okay, moving on. For the second story of the week, we have to talk about all the gajillion different things that Google announced at this week's event. In terms of phones, we got a new Pixel 9 Pro Fold for $1,800, fixing the predecessor's problems around weight and thickness, and we also got 3 new regular Pixels, which all more or less got a price bump of around $100. The 9 Pro, the 9 Pro XL, and the 9 all have the usual upgrades like brighter displays, bigger batteries, 45-watt charging, and finally also an ultrasonic fingerprint reader. Plus on top of these, there's also 3 different things that are worth highlighting. First is that many models will now start with 16 gigs of RAM, which is a sign that Google really wants you to run bigger AI models locally, which do need a lot of RAM. Second, Google also announced the brand new Tensor G4 chip. This still appears to be built by Samsung, and while it does seem to have a much stronger NPU and a better modem too, the CPU and the GPU performance sadly still seems mostly the same as it was last year, which is to say it's not exactly great, so this is now basically the equivalent of a mid-range chip. Now, unless you're a gamer, I don't think that matters too much because the optimizations are pretty good, but selling a $1,800 phone with basically a mid-range chip, that's kind of awkward. And third, the phones now also have satellite SOS in the US. Apple did this, Huawei did this, and now Google did this too. Cool. And the one thing that I expected, but we did not get this time around, is Qi 2 wireless charging. This is the MagSafe equivalent charging standard, and Google basically told Android Authority that they just couldn't be bothered with it. Weird. As for accessories, there are 2 new Pixel Watch 3s at smaller and larger sizes with updated specs and what's called a loss of pulse detection, which detects when you kinda die, I guess, and then they call emergency services. Interesting. And we also got new Pixel Buds Pro 2s, which feature Google's first ever custom earbuds chip called the Tensor A1, which should give you improved noise cancelling. I wonder if this chip is made basically by Samsung too. And to round things up, Google also announced basically a million different AI things at the event. Gemini is built into basically everything that you can imagine, and unlike Apple Intelligence, it actually ships right now. Pixel Screenshot is real and it lets you search screenshots using natural language. The Add Me feature adds you to group photos without relying on unreliable strangers, and more. Kinda cool. Oh, and my personal favorite feature is called Made You Look, which is a feature of the Fold that does not use any AI and instead will just play some cartoon stuff on the outer screen so your kid will actually look at the phone and smile for a photo for once. I legit know people who have small kids who would probably buy this phone just for this single feature alone. So yeah, big week for Google overall. Okay, for my third story of the week, the saga around the smart speaker company Sonos is just getting completely out of hand. So in case you didn't know, Sonos is this company that makes wireless speaker space. And if you recall, the company released a big new app on the 7th of May, and straight away people absolutely hated it. Many features disappeared and even accessibility somehow went backwards. Within 2 days, the company's chief product officer was on The Verge saying that it took, quote, courage to make a big infrastructure and app switch, which went down exactly as well as you might have guessed. Now, I have a Sonos 5 at home myself, and I've used the app maybe twice in my entire life, so I personally couldn't care less, but this app update has been apparently an absolute disaster for the company. The CEO has just admitted that it will cost Sonos $20 to $30 million in the short term to manage the fallout while the company is trying to fix its app. And even wilder, The Verge has also reported that Sonos is actually considering to relaunch its previous app as it struggles. Also, Sonos has just laid off 100 people, and the CEO said that 2 new hardware launches set for this year would now be delayed too, and it's implied that the app is to blame. The app was likely pushed out as preparation for the company's first headphones, which require completely different functionality from home speakers, I guess. So I don't know what the rollback to an older version would even look like, but ouch. I don't think I've ever seen a random app update take out the company like this. Okay, for our release monitor, we don't have any interesting new releases this week beyond the Pixel stuff, so we're actually moving on to the brief. And the brief starts with Realme, who's just showed off their 320-watt fast charging on a phone. This is not on a final product yet, but it took a 4,420 mAh battery from 0 to 100% in just over 4 minutes. Crazy. And talking of fast charging, Zeekr, the Chinese sister company of Polestar, also just showed off a second generation battery of its own design, which can charge apparently from 10 to 80% in just 10.5 minutes. This adds nearly 500 kilometers of range using a normal LFP type battery, and it's in a car that you can actually buy right now in China. Wild. Apparently, if you like fast charging, China is the place to be. And moving on, Apple will now apparently open up its NFC chip in markets outside of the EU too. So you can expect maybe alternative payment and similar stuff. This is a classic example of the EU basically forcing Apple to do something and then the company going like, yeah, fine, okay, maybe we'll just do it everywhere. And talking of really nice new regulations, the United States FTC has just passed a big new law too. The agency is banning the buying and selling of fake reviews and testimonials, and also of fake social media metrics such as companies paying for fake followers or fake views. Also, companies will be prohibited from misrepresenting reviews on their websites, and they won't be allowed to make legal threats to either remove or to prevent negative reviews. I guess all of that should have been a law already, but great. Moving on, Valve has just confirmed this week that it's working on supporting SteamOS on rival headsets like the Asus ROG Ally. That would be a pretty big deal given that Windows hasn't exactly stepped up here. Nice. Next, the Samsung Galaxy S24 FE also just got leaked via support pages published by Samsung, and Korean media ET New claims that the smartphone will be released globally in October. Meanwhile, in fun news this week, Diablo, the game from the 1990s, got resurrected, and it's now playable as shareware right from your browser. Very cool.
Fresh meat.
And meanwhile, entirely uncool this week is news that hackers appear to have leaked 2.7 billion personal records, which reportedly include everything from first names to last names, addresses, phone numbers, and social security numbers too. These appear to be taken from national public data, and if that sounds like a government agency, then no, that's just a private data aggregator with a fancy name who was hoarding all that data on people. Well, that's horrible. And guess what? This week's sponsor segment for Incogni basically writes itself. Experts say that, quote, the database does not contain information from individuals who use data opt-out services. Every person who used some sort of data opt-out service was not present. There are tons of data brokers like this around the world compiling sensitive data in databases all the time without your knowledge, and they're selling it to whoever is willing to pay for it. Incogni is a service that finds the databases that you're in, it reaches out on your behalf and requests the removal of your personal data based on applicable laws in various markets, and they also deal with objections from their side. Now, the removal only necessarily works in places that have legal frameworks requiring it, but as this data breach shows, that's a pretty good selection already, and looking at my own stats, they've removed me from over 50 different data brokers already. Wild. And Incogni also keeps doing this on your behalf, so you don't just get re-added to a database that you've just been deleted from, which is why this is a subscription. For you, the process is automatic, and they just started to allow you to remove multiple emails and 3 different physical addresses with just a single subscription, plus they also have family plans now too. And to sign up, be sure to use my code FridayCheckout to get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. That is incogni.com/FridayCheckout for 60% off, and I'll see you next Friday.